So, Argen is coming into the banner summons on the global server. I believe it is happening tomorrow for the EU and like in a few hours after this video drops in Japan and Asia. And I'm here to give my thoughts on whether it's worth summoning or not. So first of all, whether it's worth summoning at all if you don't have him. And second of all, whether it's worth summoning dupes using the banner for further skilling and evolving the book. So it's probably not a secret that Argen is currently the biggest damage dealer in the game because of this skill. He has the highest multiplier in the whole game as far as scaling with different debuffs goes. There are only a few units that actually scale with debuffs. So you can see here, in the global server, you do not even have the collab unit, which is probably the second most popular option. The other two are a light nat 5, so he is super good, but it is a light nat 5, so what are the odds that you will have him? And another amazing option is the dark Inogami Crow. I would say he's even a more favorable option as far as rates go. However, again, he is a light dark nat 4, and in my opinion, those are way harder to get than regular nat 5s. I mean, if you see the amount of, for example, wind nat 5s that I have, and then you check the amount of nat 4s that I have, you'll notice that I do have more nat 5s percentage-wise than I would have what I called a light dark nat 4s. But yeah, Argen. So, the closest match to Argen as far as free-to-play options go are the Wind Cats. So today I'm gonna be sort of comparing him to the Wind Cat. The conditions will not be exactly equal. Naomi is a nat 4, so naturally she will be way easier to get dupes for, and I sort of wanted this to be the case. I don't want them to be running at the same book levels and the same awakening levels. So, for the Wind Cat, she will be awakening level 15. That only requires 3 dupes, and that is definitely doable even as a free-to-play in a few months of gameplay. And I feel like that's a fair test because nat 5s are way harder to skill up and you will be way more limited on resources. So for Argen, I'm gonna be running him at awaken level 9. Of course, max skilled both the cat and the Argen. And we're gonna be comparing damage for Argen with the third skill based on the debuffs, and for the cat for the second skill based on the debuffs. So the cat does not have scaling with debuffs. She has scaling for her passive to increase stats, meaning that she does not increase damage, she only increases her crit rate and crit damage. So the scaling is a bit different, but they both increase their damage based on the debuffs they do. And for the Wind Cat, she has an A30 multiplier. However, she also has a buff that gives crit damage taken up to the boss, and this is the main reason why you in some cases may not want to be summoning Argen. So okay, so first of all, for cases where you definitely want to be summoning him, I would say if you do not have a single copy of Argen and you are at all interested in more PvE focused gameplay, so for example, if you're interested in competing in the leaderboards for the field bosses, for example, to go for these rewards, I'm not even sure if the rewards are updated for the global servers like this, but if they aren't, they will be soon. So if you're interested in competing PvE wise, for example in field bosses, maybe you want to compete with your guildies in the guild raid for those extra rewards that you get from being the top 3 damage in your guild. In those cases, Argen is by far the most popular choice for damage, and then you should definitely be summoning him on your account if you do not have him already. Now for dupes, it of course depends on if you feel like the future released monsters are useful for you. If you think that you will not want to be summoning the future banner releases, you can consider skilling him up. However, I personally am not a big fan of summoning skill ups with banners. I've done that with the fire and water vampire hunters, and I honestly regret it because I know that it's more important to get different monsters, a big variety of different monsters, and later you can skill them up pretty easily using the blessing summons rather than going straight up for the dupes there from the banners. But if you have a lot of what they call mystical scrolls, say like several hundreds, I would at least have 200 reserved for any banner monster that may come up in the future. And the rest of them is of course up to you. If you feel like the new summons from the banners will not be any useful and you don't predict any good ones being released, go for it. If not, I would recommend conserving your scrolls for banner summons and using more legendary and transcendent scrolls to skill up your dupes. Now, if you're someone who is not particularly interested in achieving those high damage ranks in PvE, so neither the world boss or guild raid, stuff like that, I will give you another option about the summons, and it's the Wind Cat. You probably already even used the Wind Cat. However, I will give you another reason why she may be just enough for you as far as PvE goes compared to running an Argen by yourself. So picture a scenario of a raid. There are 3 members in it, and we're gonna be comparing 2 different scenarios. One scenario where all 3 members are running an Argen in their team as a main damage dealer. Of course, when you run Argen, you do want to be running him in a soling slot, so he could spam this skill for more damage. He also works in a different slot, but then again, you're not really maximizing on the damage that he does. He will be able to provide more debuffs, but he will not be able to maximize that damage a lot. So for those damage dealers that scale with debuffs, you do want to be running them in a soling slot when possible. So let's get back to the scenario of 3 Argens versus, listen to this, 2 Argens and a Wind Cat. So if you know a scenario that, for example, your pre-made party members for raid, if you have so, will be running an Argen in their teams, so both of them will be running Argens. In a lot of cases, it will actually be beneficial for you to run the Wind Cat over a 3rd Argen. And the reason for that is, if you know, the Wind Cat actually has a very important debuff right here. It is the crit damage taken up. And if you check the units that have that debuff, you'll notice that there are a total of 2 units in the game only. One of them is a Light Dark Nat 4, which it's possible that not a lot of you will have in your teams. The second one is the Wind Cat, and that is by far the easiest unit to obtain the debuff from. So by spamming this skill actually has the same multiplier as the 3rd skill. So whenever you're doing damage, make sure you are spamming this skill over this skill. I know that I made the mistake of spamming this before until I realized that this skill is way more important. But yeah, if you check this skill, you'll notice that she has a decent multiplier, since the scaling with debuffs comes from the passive. And by spamming this skill, you are actually constantly increasing the crit damage taken up effect. So at like 10 mana, you are able to spam it 3 times, meaning that instantly you can go up to like 100% crit damage taken up increase. And why this matters is that if you are running 3 Argens in your team, for example, as a damage dealer for raids, you will not be having this debuff stacked very easily. You can run your cat in a non-soling slot, but then the maximum amount you can stack is, depending on how many cats, 1 cat will do pretty much 1 level only, because the cooldown is simply higher than the duration of the debuff. So the debuff will be down for like 20% of the time, and at max it will reach like level 3. If you are not running them in a non-soling slot, or you're running less than 3 cats, so meaning that 1 cat for each party member, you will have that debuff stacked even less. And this debuff really matters, because if you are running 2 Argens and a cat, and the person running the cat is constantly soling, spamming that 2nd skill, so meaning that if you're in a raid and your main damage is a cat, you will be doing a little bit less damage with the cat compared to Argen. However, with the cat, you are constantly stacking those crit damage taken up effects, meaning that the other party members in your team with their Argens will be doing significantly higher damage with their Argens, allowing you to take the boss down much faster. So in those cases, running a Wind Cat plus 2 Argens will be more efficient than running 3 Argens. And this is probably the main case where you may want to be saving up the skulls and not summoning Argen if you feel like that is a scenario that you can do. And yeah, for the last part, I will compare you the damage between a Awakening level 15 Cat and an Awakening level 9 Argen, just so you can imagine the difference between them. And I will be comparing it in a simulator right here, just to keep the conditions the same, so that the debuffs are the same, everything like that. For the Wind Cat, of course, we will be spamming the crit damage skill, and you will notice that the damage will constantly raise by quite a bit the more she stacks those debuffs. So let's switch a team and we'll give it a spin. Okay, so this is the team we'll be using. I will let the other 2 units first land all of their debuffs. So Helia to land her defense break, Bastet to buff up attack, and I'm not sure if she will land attack break, but the cat has attack break on her second skill as well, so that's really not too important. And we'll be checking out the damage per hit that she does, and after that we'll be checking out Argen. But with Argen, we will be checking out the damage without damage taken up, because unfortunately, if you do not run the cat, you will not have that debuff, and the difference, you will notice that will be pretty huge. Of course, I'm not sure if you have the new summoner skills, as the fire element of Cleave actually has a crit damage taken up on his new ability. However, if you do not have that ability in your server yet, you may not be able to utilize it. Also, since Cleaves are usually not built with very high accuracy, you may not even be able to land it. Also, if you're not running a Cleave in your team, that's another condition under you may not be able to land the debuff. So I will personally not be using it for a fair comparison, just in case there are no Cleaves on your team. And yeah, let's test out the damage. And let's do a hit, 132k, 154k, 160k, 160k, and another one, 166k. So you notice that the scaling with that crit damage taken up, without it, the damage was around 132k. With a level 3 debuff, that damage jumped to a whole 166k per hit. So the difference between having that crit damage taken up effect and not having it is like what? A good 25 to 30% of total damage. So the difference is pretty huge when I think about it. And now we're gonna give the same set to Argen, and we're gonna go test him again. Pop the Argen here, and let's hope for the debuffs to land. There we go, and let's test the damage. 69k, 69k, beautiful number, 69k. So if we go to the calculator real quick, 69 times 3 is 207k damage. So imagine a scenario where you are using 3 Argens and no crit damage taken up effects. If given the same runes, of course, you will be looking at 207k times 3. So 3 Argens will be doing like 620k or so for each skill that one of the Argen uses. Now, if you take the 207k and you multiply their damage by like a good 25 to 30%, you'll notice that the damage jumps to like what? Let me see. Actually, I must switch it to a camera where you are able to see it. There we go. So if we take that 207k and we add an additional 25% to that damage, you are looking at a good 260k per hit on an Argen. That will be 2 Argens in your ally team. So that's well, like somewhere close to 520k for 2 skill hits. Then you add another what's it called? Damage of the cat that you will be having. And as you saw, with 3 stacks, she was doing around 160k. So if you add another 160k to the mix, you can see that by using 2 Argen skill 3s and 1 Naomi skill 1 with the debuff stacked, the damage will actually be higher than if you were straight up using 3 Argens in a raid scenario without any crit damage taken up effect. So just be thoughtful when building your teams and when deciding when to summon, is that if your team member, for example, this is mostly important if you are running pre-made parties. If you do not have that crit damage taken up at your disposal, it may be worth thinking about running a Windcat over another Argen in your teams. And if you are a person who wants to run a Windcat, she will still be a great improvement to your team. I know we struggle with that in the guild raids as well. We have plenty of debuffs, defense breaks, maxed out, everything like that. But those crit damage effects do lack, and we only are able to reach like level 4, level 5 crit damage effects, even with 20 people doing the guild raid. So be mindful when deciding whether it's worth summoning Argen and whether that crit damage taken up effect will be more important than having just another Argen in your team. So yeah, a bit of a lengthy video this one, but I hope it sort of sheds some light on my thoughts on whether you should summon. So just a recap, if you do not have an Argen, I would recommend getting one in most cases if you are at all interested in having those PvE high scores being reached. So doing world bosses, doing well in guild raids, stuff like that. If you are very hyper focused on those leaderboard positions, of course, consider going for dupes until at least level 13 or 14 awakening, as those are still pretty cheap to get. It's the level 15 that gets a bit more expensive with 40 dupe shards. However, definitely don't overdo it, as even without Argen, you will have just a perfect time completing the whole game without a damage dealer that can scale with debuffs. And in most cases, the Windcat will be, even though it's less damage, will be enough to carry you through the game. So yeah, that's about it, and see you in the next one.